Live! The green button turned red.
Hate when that happens.
Yep. All right, all you people that aren't watching yet, we're about to go live.
Hi, people.
Ignore standards, DNS as code, and we chat about incident response. Welcome to the Iron Sysadmin podcast, your source for IT news, commentary, and a healthy dose of paranoia. Woot! Episode 13, lucky 13.
Oh.
Did you go look up what book 13 is? It's
no,
pretty obvious.
But the 13 means everything's going to go wrong.
No.
Isn't that what that means? No, wait, that's the Florida that doesn't exist in my building.
I already had to fight with my camera tonight. Had to reboot to get that thing to work. Seems to happen every week. The camera works all week long, and as soon as I go to record the podcast, nope, no camera.
Who needs cameras?
Who needs cameras? I mean, this is an audio podcast, right?
Well,
so, yeah, welcome to episode 13. What's that?
You keep turning the video thing on.
Keep turning the video thing on?
It's an audio. Yeah, it's an audio podcast with pictures.
Audio with picture with like animation. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's what it is. It's not pictures.
We are fully animated.
Fully animated. Right. So, episode 13. As usual, I'm Nate, your host, and joining me from his wood-grained, secluded location
is
Isn't there wood grain back there?
I
shouldn't talk.
A child in the background. Go away, child.
He just wants to be on the podcast. That delinquent of yours.
Yes. Couple more weeks. That won't happen anymore. I have my own office. People don't be walking through. It'll be nice.
Because the cage will be finished?
No, because I'll have my own office. What cage? I don't know what you're talking about.
Just
that would be wrong.
To do. I got some steel on order.
It would be wrong to put the children in a cage. I know.
Food and water, that's all they need. Food, water, and an Xbox.
Food, water, and an Xbox. Actually, well, I mean, if that's the case, then yes, they have their own rooms.
Yeah, it's like a cage, except there's no steel bars. All right, so
big things, water on the wall, and
oh yeah, like we gave our guinea pig.
Yeah.
With
a little ball in the end. We'll make them have to lick it to be able to get water out. Just
but when it's empty, the guinea pig squeals at us. I don't know what the kids are going to do when it's empty.
I don't know. Room soundproof.
Oh. This hypothetical room.
I mean, yes. If I was going to build something like that.
If I were to build a room to imprison my children in, it would be soundproof. But I would never do that.
So what are we drinking tonight? I've got ye old Mississippi Mud, which is about, the name pretty much says it all. It's a black and tan. It's not bad.
It's good, except it only holds one beer, and the reason for that is I have two different beers to drink tonight. Usually I drink two of the same thing. Tonight it's two different things. I've got two from a variety pack of Yards that I picked up. I have too many beer bottles sitting next to my desk here. You should see it. I've got a Yards Tavern Ale, the Thomas Jefferson.
Oh, okay. I know what you got now.
And I've got a Yards General Washington's Tavern Porter. This thing is awesome. This is the best beer that's been in this pack. The ale is pretty good. There was a Tavern Spruce, which was okay, but this thing is like great. I would buy a whole case of this.
Tavern Spruce?
Yeah,
like
I don't
an
know.
IPA?
It was kind of, it had like a fruity taste to it. I'm really not sure.
Interesting.
It wasn't terrible. That was also like, that was 5%, and these other two are like 7 and 8. So.
Oh, it's going to be a good night.
I like slightly stronger beers, but not the sort that make me feel like I'm drinking syrup or hard liquor.
This is
not like that. Not like that beast you had.
Oh, I love the beast. That was so good.
I picked one of those up, and it was just like, wow.
Good, wasn't it?
It was good, yeah.
Yeah,
what I remember.
The alcohol content isn't even listed on this thing. I'm gonna guess it's about 0.
Does it taste like 0?
It's, I don't know. It's a black and tan. It's not. It's. I don't know. It's okay. Look, it has a neat bottle, and I figured I'll give it a shot. And now that I have the neat bottle, I don't ever need to buy it again.
There you go. Well, if you want to run to the beer distributor, that's where I got the. Oh, hit my mic. The beer distributor down by you.
Yep,
so
that will be
go quick.
That will be a trip that I will be making first week of May, right before I move.
Wait, did I get these here? No, I didn't. I got these in. Yeah, the one downtown here where I live, which will be closer to you after you move.
Yeah.
Anyway,
I guess.
I believe they had a case of this Tavern Porter too. So next time I'm down there, I'm gonna see if I can get a case of that because it's pretty darn good. All right. So this first news article we have is freaking terrifying.
It's neat because you can try it out too.
Oh yeah, it is neat, and I tried it out before, and that was when I added that comment to our show notes that said this is horrifying.
Yes. What? Going to a website and not actually going to the website, even though it looks exactly like the website you think you're going to, is bad?
Yep. So Ars Technica and probably many other people have reported on this because I heard of this on a few other news sources as well. Apparently, using Unicode, you can basically masquerade a URL which is specially crafted to use Unicode to look like another domain. In this case, they have forged apple.com.
Yes.
This is scary stuff.
Well, we need Unicode.
We need Unicode.
Yes, it's imperative that we have Unicode.
Well, that's part of the comments in the... I believe it was a Mozilla developer said that, we're not going to take this feature away. So, okay, so step back for a second. The reason the URL bar in your browser supports Unicode is for foreign languages that don't support a Latin character set.
Right.
We got to be fair, right? If the Chinese or Japanese or whoever, or the Russians want to make URLs in their native character set, we shouldn't stop them from doing that, right? It's not, the internet is not just full of English-speaking or Latin character set languages. It's full of, diversity. This makes perfect sense. So, of course, your browser will support these non-Latin characters. And in doing so, there's a lot of non-Latin characters that look a whole lot like Latin characters, but aren't Latin characters.
Right. So
when viewed in the proper font, for example, APPLE can be spelled out in completely non-Latin characters using a domain that looks like, where is it? They linked it like 3 times here. XN-80AK6AA92E.com.
Right. And
which literally, if you copy and paste that into your URL bar, it almost looks like a redirect. Like the browser acts like it's a redirect, but all it really does is rewrite that URL to something that looks like www.apple.com. Or at least apple.com, I guess. I forget if it did the www.
It's neat because it...
But yeah, the article has a nice description as to what this does and how it works, but holy crap.
Yeah, it's apparently Cyrillic is the characters that they're using for that. So this is called a homograph attack because it looks exactly the same. There's a million different ways to do it. I guess there's another attack. There's another. I mean, there's a bunch of different ways to do this one. And that one doesn't look at all right. But so it's if every single character is from that character set. You can't have one that's not part of that character set.
So that probably limits the attack vectors at least a
Maybe.
little bit. If you can't find a character in, say, Cyrillic that matches all the characters you need, then maybe.
Right.
Because they won't let you mix character sets, which is good. But yeah, they said the reason this looks so so convincing is so like the character that they are using as an example is the letter A, the Latin letter A, and a Cyrillic letter that looks a whole lot like the lowercase letter A.
Right.
And then the font that your Chrome web browser is using to display it basically looks identical. The a Latin A versus this Cyrillic A, or whatever it's actually called in Cyrillic. But normally they would look different, or at least slightly different, that you could maybe tell. But is using the same font, it looks identical. And it's scary.
All right. So Chrome apparently fixed this problem in version 58 in some manner. I'm not sure exactly what the fix is.
Who knows how?
And for Firefox, since the Mozilla guys basically at this point say we're not going to change that because it would make things look stupid for other people, there is a workaround. So if you go into the config for Firefox, you search for I guess it's pronounced Punycode, P-U-N-Y code, and there's a show Punycode variable, and you change it from false to true, and it won't show you the fake ASCII characters anymore. You'll see things as they really are. So it's worth
scary.
Yeah, maybe worth turning that on if you're in the know. I
wonder if things like email clients will let you do this. Because to me, this is the perfect vector for phishing, right? So we've trained users, hover over the URL. If the URL looks funny, don't go there.
Right.
So if you're using something like, say, I don't know, Thunderbird or some other IMAP client, is that going to do the same sort of translation from the character set, from the Latin code, which is supposed to display the other Unicode character set? Is it going to do that translation or not? If it doesn't, then this isn't as big of a deal.
Yeah,
but if it does, then
Thunderbird may, since it's based on Mozilla. It is not based on Mozilla. It is Mozilla, so it uses a lot of the same rendering engines.
Yeah, it's the same engine.
I don't know how it displays it in. I don't know. It's worth trying. I guess it would depend.
I mean, I'd imagine that webmail clients, Gmail or Zimbra or Exchange Online or whatever, would just act as your browser would act, which, of course, unless you've made this change or you're running Chrome, will translate it to this, Unicode.
Yeah, so Thunderbird, you hover over the link and it'll show you. You hover over what the whatever the word is in the text, which you can set to whatever you want. You can make that the real apple.com in ASCII characters if you want.
Sure. But then
when you hover over it, right? When you hover over it, does it show you the Punycode or does it show you the Cyrillic letters?
Right.
I don't know.
Might be worth some testing. Somebody get on that.
Yes, somebody get on that. I'm sure there's lots and lots of spammers out there that have been working on this problem for years, and they will solve it eventually.
With this domain in it, and I'll let you know because I use Thunderbird. All right. Moving on. Off the Slashdot we go. This is an article from HelpNet Security. Is that what that is? Yeah.
This is an interesting one. Only because it's so prevalent and it's been around for so long. So how did you learn how to do things with Linux and programming and everything else?
Well, obviously, I went to an institution of higher learning and got a computer science degree, and I learned all about all the languages I'd ever need to know. Right?
I I didn't know that Google was giving out computer science degrees these days.
I mean, I went and I bought a book on the particular language that I was very interested in, and I went and
Right.
learned it that way.
Eventually, maybe. So a lot of us, including a lot of comp sci students,
Most of us.
have learned a lot of our programming and sysadmin and everything else by kind of floating around on the internet and just looking up ways to do things, which is extremely helpful. The problem is,
So the first language I really learned was Perl, which I literally did learn from a book. I bought a book and I read through it and I figured out Perl. And every language since then, I took the theories that I learned from writing Perl and applied them to other languages by using things like, Stack Exchange or Stack Overflow or wherever, Google searches.
right.
So this particular article is very, very relevant. I think a lot of people have done it that way.
Right. So the basis of this is that they're seeing, I guess a bunch of researchers went through some code bases for PHP of all things on GitHub and found 117 vulnerabilities that they believe have been introduced through the use of code from popular but insufficiently reviewed tutorials. So cut and paste strikes again. So you go out, you say, how do I load data from a database? You find the code, you cut and paste it, you make whatever changes you need to, and poof, you've got an answer.
Yep. Change your database, your server address, your database name, and your login credentials, and bam.
Yep.
Off you go. Regardless of that cross-site scripting vulnerability that was in that code that everyone else has used.
Right. So this has always been the problem that I have with tutorials since I've learned a lot of the security end of things. Is a lot of people do these tutorials and purposely throw out security because it can get complex quick if you're trying to be ultra secure. So they want you to learn the basics first, and then they don't bother teaching about security because they're just there to teach you the basics. And unless you're specifically looking for security stuff, you don't get it. So a lot of tutorials will teach you how to, add SQL injection attacks to your code because that's easy as opposed to not doing that.
So, I mean, also what it comes down to is these tutorials online aren't really necessarily intended to teach you all the deep levels of security. They're intended to get you up and running as quickly as they can.
Right. Oh, also,
so that's really the problem.
There's no standard for who can write a tutorial. So.
Right. Unless you are learning it from that comp sci professor, but even there's really not much of a review process there. It's just, if students liked the professor, he keeps his job. And even then, if students don't like a professor, well, I'm not going to get too deep into those politics.
No, that's no, you lose your mind. But I mean, the point is, tutorials online are great for learning concepts. Cut and pasting is a quick shortcut to getting things running.
I've done it. I've been there.
Outside of that,
why the hell doesn't this work? Oh, this one works. Just copy paste. What is it doing? 30% understand this. It's whatever. It's fine. I'm sure it's fine.
Right. Yep. Yep. So you got to be careful of what you're cutting and pasting. You should definitely be going back and looking to see if there's any security problems with that code. There probably are. Everybody has security problems. Everybody has bugs. Just a matter of figuring out how to deal with them.
This is why I just run all my websites on Joomla.
Yes, because it's already got everything. It's got all the security bugs built in for you.
Yeah, I don't have to worry about my own code being exploited. It's someone else's code.
Right.
I can point the finger at them. It's your fault.
All right, moving right along. We should talk about our buddy Jason Scott and the company he works for.
Yeah, right. So again, from Slashdot, and also I guess this is linked directly from archive.org, or at least it's a discussion based on an article from archive.org. Archive.org is choosing to ignore robots.txt so that they can better index sites. or at least I should say better scrape sites, because their job isn't necessarily indexing like a search engine is. It's preserving.
There are some very vocally upset people that are concerned about this. So one of the people that I follow that I respect fairly highly, who is pretty big on the privacy and internet related things, is a guy by the name of Lauren Weinstein. He does talk shows every once in a while, and he's pretty outspoken. He is really adamantly against this. Not for why you would think. I think from what I was reading, from what he wrote, it's not so much that they're ignoring the robots.txt, and that's a bad thing. It's that he believes that by ignoring the robots.txt file, archive.org is going to end up getting banned by a lot of domains, and they're not going to be able to archive those sites anymore.
Yeah.
Which is possible.
Or so yeah, if you're not following the standards, then that would make it look like you're doing things badly. Because face it, if you're a bad guy, you're going to ignore the standards that are supposed to protect a site. And if that's what you're doing by ignoring robots' text, then sure, makes you look like a bad guy.
Yep.
You may not even get intentionally banned. You may get auto banned by some system.
Right. Well, you weren't at the recent LV Hackers meeting, but we had a nice presentation. Yeah. We rubbed this in for a little bit. We had a nice presentation on robots.txt and how incredibly useful it is if you're looking to attack a site. Because, you go to the robots.txt file, what does that contain? All the
Contains
pages
all the stuff that
they don't want in a search engine. Well, why?
Yeah, so of course your first vector is hit those pages, right? Yeah.
Sometimes it's legit, and it just doesn't make sense for it to be there. And other times it's, well, they're hiding like login pages and admin pages and all sorts of other stuff. And if it's in the robots.txt file, it never shows up in the search engine, right?
Yeah, this is sort of the problem I've always had with robots.txt. Because it's like, here's all the secret stuff I don't want you to see. If you're a computer and you're obeying robots.txt, then sure, I guess that works. But if you're a person, I'm just going to pull robots.txt and see what's in there.
Yeah, it's really interesting that robots.txt is still out there and still used. I guess there are legitimate uses, but a lot of people don't understand that just because you put it in there doesn't mean it's not accessible.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the first time I heard about this whole concept of robots.txt, I thought it was really hokey. I thought, oh, I'm going to make a text file of the stuff I don't want people to look at, which points them directly at the things that I don't want them to look at. And, again, sure, search engines aren't going to index this, but how much is that really a big deal? I mean, from a performance perspective, I would assume so, but with CPUs getting cheaper and cheaper and, processing power being cheap, I just can't see the security benefit to a robots.txt anymore.
No, if you're using for security, you're doing it wrong. Stop.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, I guess the big rub, at least in this article, is that it sets a precedent that says, well, if archive.org can ignore it, so can Google.
Right.
Right. And anytime.
My understanding is that Google does, in fact, ignore the robots.txt file. Does it already? I believe so. I may be wrong on that, but I believe so. And there are definitely others that don't. There's a lot of search engines that just downright ignore it because why bother? It's also much simpler to write a search engine that'll just crawl everything than have to download the robots.txt and make an index of things it's not allowed to go to and check every time before it goes to a link. A lot of branching code in there. Get rid of all of it. Just get rid of ignore the robots.txt. As a matter of fact, download the robots.txt and cache that too. So, yep, archive.org is joining the dark side, as they say.
Joining the dark side.
Their job is to archive everything. You can't archive everything.
Yeah, I mean, so I can absolutely understand why they're doing it. Simply from a we need to get everything perspective, but they're ignoring what's considered to be a standard,
Right.
and that's kind of a bad thing, right?
I I don't know. I haven't used a robots.txt file in like forever. I don't bother.
Yeah, I haven't knowingly used one. I don't know if any of the web applications that I use automatically employ one. It's possible.
With that exception, yes. I think there's some that deploy one automatically.
Right. So, yeah, I guess we'll just have to next time we see our buddy at DerbyCon, if he ever comes back. He's missed the last two, I think. We'll have to argue with him about robots text.
Yeah, I don't. We'll have to find out. Jason,
Yep.
Jason,
Yep.
if you're watching our wonderful podcast, let us know if you're going to be at DerbyCon this year.
I'm sure he's not. We're not cool enough.
Well, he should be archiving us.
Maybe he is. Does he archive YouTube? I'll have to
know
go
if he
check
can archive.
archive.org for my
Yeah.
own site and see what he got.
Yep. All right, and last but not least is your
DNS as code. This just sounded really cool. That's why I included it. This is from Tom Lemoncelli's blog, everythingsysadmin.com. It just sounds neat, like they've moved on to a new way of managing DNS in a more cloudy fashion, or a new, I don't know, DevOpsy fashion. And now it's open sourced.
right.
So yeah, the link in the show notes takes you right to the blog entry where they talk about it. And basically, they've open sourced the code for this thing they're calling DNS control.
Right,
Which,
and they is Stack Overflow, by the way.
Oh yeah, sorry. Stack Overflow has released the source code for this thing. So yeah, introducing DNS control. DNS as code has arrived.
So I guess Stack Overflow's DNS is really complex. They have.
It's even in the article.
I didn't realize how many domains they had, but apparently they have lots. So they've made lots of changes. They're no longer hosting their own servers. They have moved on to using the cloud and not just using a cloud, apparently using every cloud they possibly can simultaneously.
I bet they weren't affected by that Mirai botnet.
I guess not. They so they have 9 different providers implemented, and they manage their domains with. Oh, they are still running their own bind servers. Sorry. So their own bind servers, Route 53, Google Cloud DNS, Name.com, Cloudflare, and I guess a bunch of others. So they designed their own. It says they have their own DSL for describing their DNS entries, so their own language. And sorry. So they have their own language.
We can edit that out later. I don't know what child you were murdering, but
no, that's the dog. It's the dog. Okay, well, I'll start that over then. So they've designed their own language, their own DSL for this, based in looks like JavaScript is what they say, and from what I'm seeing, it looks like it's almost like it's just variable declarations. And then I guess the code to manage all this is in Go, which apparently everybody is using now because it's.
Well, you know, it's the new Ruby.
It's Google. I know, Google. So it's supposed to be very efficient. Now, I'm not sure that I don't know. I'm kind of on the fence as to whether I like this or not because I get that it's automated and they're not locked into a provider, etc. But the way that they describe this is that they can comment out lines of code and just change. Well, I guess changing variables is okay, but they comment out single lines of code to activate or deactivate CDNs and change thousands of records, which I guess is neat. It doesn't feel clean to me. I just I don't know. I'd have to dig into it more and figure it out. But it's a neat way of doing things.
It seems like a pretty cool way of managing DNS,
Yeah.
on many providers the way they've described.
Yeah, it's definitely different.
I'd imagine there's lots of ways to skin this cat, but this is a pretty interesting approach.
It's very DevOpsy. It's all about
DevOps.
the automation.
DNS is code.
Yep. So I will be digging into this myself and just trying to figure out whether or not this is useful for us. I mean, I'm sure I don't have the same DNS problems that somebody like Stack Overflow might have.
Yeah, sure.
But if it makes life easier, it makes life easier.
Yeah, indeed. All right, so that about covers the news for tonight, unless you wanted to keep talking about DNS's code, as awesome as that is. I mean, it's really riveting stuff.
I don't know.
I
I've had
can
a lot.
resolve all the names.
I've had a lot of fun with DNS. You're welcome.
Yeah. Maybe I'll talk about that after we finished recording, but I'll say that a certain change that you made when we switched to Power DNS got noticed by our security audit this year.
In a positive or negative way?
Well, I mean, you could call it negative for the same reasons that you didn't want to make the change, but you did anyway because you didn't have much choice.
Oh, okay. Huh. I'll have to discuss that. Anyway.
Yeah, we can chat about it later.
Wow, you're still having security audits. Kudos for you.
Yeah, only because, well, again, I don't want to. we went. Believe it or not, we went with a good provider this time around. We went with Black Hills.
Oh, hey, good guys. Good guys.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm very impressed with them, and I mean, we're not paid at all to say this, but I'm just saying that they were very patient with us, even though the only thing we needed was a vulnerability scan at this point. I'm kind of hoping that it moves into more. I'd like to have a deeper test done at some point, but this is sort of the start. This was more or less par for the course. We've been doing external vulnerability scans, as you're aware, for years, and we just needed another one done as whatever.
Yeah, well, John Strand is the owner or the CEO or whatever term you want to give him. Him and his team are they're really good people. I've worked with them as well. They did an amazing job, and they are unbelievably thorough.
Yeah, we were looking. We wanted to get a feel for who they were before we contracted with them, and the guy we were dealing with, which was the equivalent of what you might call like a sales engineer or like a, I don't know, he was the guy pulling all the strings, getting everything organized. He went on vacation for a week, and our availability put us that the week he was out was the week that we were able to have this phone conversation with him. So they're like, "Oh, that's cool." Like we ended up just chatting with John Strand.
Yeah.
For an hour. Really cool guy, wow. Really nice guy. It was
John's cool. Pretty cool.
It was pretty cool.
Yeah, they and you can't beat the price. I mean,
they were more expensive than the puppy mill we used last time around, but they were.
Well, that was literally a security puppy mill. I mean,
yeah, I mean that was like they just gave us like a Nessus report and off we went. We don't have the final version of our report yet, but they gave us a draft to look over, and it's very nice, very well put together. And I got to say that I'm impressed. We're going to continue to use them for even if we just continue with the vulnerability scans. Even though I think we could be doing those ourselves and get more out of a place like Black Hills. But yeah, like I said, they're not sponsors or anything, but they did good work, and it's worth mentioning.
Good. Glad to hear. All right. Speaking of security, what do you got lined up for us?
you can do that at patreon.com/IronSysadmin. I don't care if it's 25 cents. Whatever you want to give us is cool. So thanks. I did pick up a mixer last week. Well, last time we recorded, I had it in place. But that was largely out of my own pocket. Like I said, we have been getting some money out of Patreon, but it hasn't added up to enough that I was able to afford the whole mixer and all this other stuff you can see in the video that I've got now. That's better than the mic that was attached to this headset when I started recording.
How much did the wreath cost?
What?
The wreath.
Oh, the wreath. No, that's completely made by my wife. You can.
Oh, okay. So can't you just have her make a mixer?
No, but if anybody wants to buy a handmade wreath to hang on your door like that one, she can make you one, and we'll send it to you.
You could make that a tier on the Patreon.
That's a tier, yeah. If you donate $25 a month, we'll send you a wreath.
You might want to check with your wife before you promise these things.
Yeah, no, she loves making this stuff. She would make the stuff even if nobody was buying it. Which is why there's one hanging on the door right there.
That was Nate crying out for somebody to please buy them because making them for nobody to buy costs a lot of money, and it keeps her occupied. No, but income would be nice. I get it.
They knit. I don't know if she does knitting. She does something with yarn, crocheting, I think, cross stitching, all kinds of stuff.
Does she use 1 or 2 sticks?
It's one. It's crocheting.
That's crocheting.
I've learned that much. One. It's not even a stick. It's a hook.
Whatever. Close enough.
No, for Easter, she put out a call on Facebook to her friends. Like, she makes these strawberry pies, which are like this Jell-O filling. They're really good, right? And she's like, "Hey, does anybody want a strawberry pie for Easter? I'm going to sell them for $5 a pie." She got 22 orders. She spent a day and a half making pies.
And was she the happiest pie maker ever?
I guess, because she was getting paid for it.
Okay, well.
But for $5 a pie, I mean, I don't know how it worked out. I just trust that she didn't end up spending a bunch of money on pies. Anyway, I'm going to drink some more.
If that's not a cry for help, I don't know what is.
So, yeah. Patreon.
All right.
Awesome. Give us money.
Patreon's fun.
So you got anything cool going on?
Oh, moving.
Yeah, I guess that's sort of eating up all your time, isn't it?
Other stuff that I can't talk about.
Stuff you can't talk about. That's that cage.
Not even work related. Maybe we'll talk after. Work related, I've got tons of stuff. I'm up to my eyeballs in everything.
Yeah, well, that's what you get for working for a startup, and for a guy who's involved in a billion startups.
Yeah. Yep. Pretty much. Lots and lots to do. So neat stuff.
Listen,
learning a lot.
When he asks you to help him with the flight suit armor,
the answer is absolutely.
Yes. Anyway.
Oh yeah. Right up to the point where I'm the first one testing it, and then it's
Can you fly this thing?
Have you met my kids?
Right.
So, yep. Lots and lots of fun. So, finance is really weird, and I don't understand it.
Okay, you're the sysadmin. You don't have to understand.
I know. It's good thing too, because I mean, balancing my checkbook takes a lot of effort every month. So, and
I don't understand how education works, and I'm a sysadmin at a college, so.
Well, you stand in front of the kids, you assign them a bunch of stuff to do, and then you go drink.
Yep.
Look, I told you about the professor.
I got the drinking part now.
So, yeah.
Way too much head on here. I'm going to have to let it settle.
Bummer. That means you can't drink
it. I mean, come on. That's like, look at that.
If you got a straw.
Drink beer from a straw. That's got to be against some rule somewhere. Yeah. So, yesterday we took the kids well, the whole family, the wife and the two kids, on an off-road Easter egg hunt, and it was a blast. Like I said last time around, as the warmer weather comes, so does off-road season start. So now I am torn between my two hobbies, not just the one. All winter, the only thing the Jeep gets is like maintenance and stuff to make sure that it's working when spring comes. Once spring gets here, it's like, forget it. I gotta. Every spare minute is a decision between, do I work on the Jeep or do I do geeky, sysadmin stuff in my spare time. So yeah, yesterday weirdest thing. I don't know if anybody that listens to this podcast cares, but there's a guy that I know from years ago who he was a trail guide at an off-road park that was in Hazleton, Pennsylvania, which closed. And of course, what did he do with his life after the park closed? He started his own business, trail guiding and teaching people how to off-road. And I mean, that's like, if I wasn't a sysadmin, I'd be doing that. That's an awesome job. But anyway, he organized this trail ride where it was a whole day of off-roading in an off-road park up in Shamokin, Pennsylvania. And like every 2 or 3 hours or so, they had placed throughout the park in different, open areas, just egg hunts. So you would just drive with your kids to the next egg hunt, and then we'd all get out and we'd have an egg hunt, and the kids would find cool stuff, and then we'd, pack back into the Jeep and drive for a couple hours and have another egg hunt. It was a lot of fun. So
I'm glad you explained it, because I was worried about you running over the eggs.
No, it wasn't that. There was no running over of eggs.
Or just driving past the eggs, because I mean, as you're riding around in the Jeep, how do you see the egg? There's so much other stuff around you.
No, it was pretty cool, and I got a free pass to the park. That was in one of the eggs, and then like there was candy, I guess, for the kids. But I got a free pass to the park. So yeah, that was fun.
You didn't get any candy? No candy?
There was candy. It's just that I let the kids have the candy.
Uh-huh.
I was happy with the. So look, it was like $30 to register for the egg hunt thing, and the free pass for the park paid for that.
You're not
$30.
fooling anyone, Nate. I'm a parent as well. I know you got candy.
Well, yeah, I'm sure I had some.
Well, you have to check it for the kids.
Yeah, got to make sure it's okay. Now, half of it, as I'm sure you're aware as a parent, most of it was melted by the time we had the egg hunt.
Oh, well, yeah. There is that.
So we had to let it cool off before they could eat any of it. Otherwise, it was just a mess. And of course, they ate some of it, which turned into a mess. So, yeah.
All over them that you then had to clean. Yeah, no.
But yeah, it was a good time.
Been there.
From a more IT side of things, I was tinkering with Amazon's what do they call it? Elastic Container Service. Have you looked at this at all?
I have, yes. I'm not overly impressed with it yet.
So, what's your understanding of how it's supposed to work?
I was digging into this the other day. So we had looked at it months ago, and it was a mess months ago. They've gotten a little bit better. So as I understand it right now, you create yourself a cluster based on basically it looks like you're creating an EC2 instance. Same idea. And then once you create the cluster, then you deploy containers into that cluster. So you don't have to do any of the OS maintenance or any of the installation of Docker or all of that. It will handle all of that for you. You just deploy containers to these instances. So you lose a little bit of control doing that.
The thing that didn't... So I got as far as deploying a cluster. Okay. And the thing that did not seem obvious is the containers, plural part. Did you actually deploy a cluster at all?
I messed around with it a little bit. I didn't do a whole lot. So it's based on scaling.
I deployed a cluster, and it asked me for a Git repo for my container, singular. As though its purpose was simply to scale a single container.
Which to me, I tried.
To me, seemed less than useful. What I was imagining I was going to get was something like, a Kubernetes or something that was built for me. Maybe not specifically Kubernetes, but something where I could deploy several containers across a cluster of EC2 instances. And instead, what I got was more of a, you've got a cluster of EC2 instances that'll run a single application, which I could still see benefit, from a scalability perspective.
Right.
But, and again, I'm not a developer and I'm not exactly a container pro. So maybe I just misread something. So if anybody has dealt with the Elastic Container Service and knows that I am
wrong, you have to create task definitions, is what they call them.
Okay.
Which apparently is how you deploy the individual containers, and you create multiple task definitions, and it'll deploy them for you. And
okay.
you give them a bunch of different constraints, how much memory they're allowed to use and CPU, etc. And then somewhere in here, there's a way to do scaling as well. So if you go to ECS without anything on there, and you just hit that stupid get started thing, it will go through a sample app for you, and with everything, the container, the scaling, the whole 9 yards. And it'll kind of show you how everything is set up. But like I said, I'm not overly impressed with how they have it set up. I feel like I have a lot more control.
Yeah, if I'm going to deploy several instances on EC2, I think I'd rather do it the way I want, not the way they've prescribed.
Yeah. So when I have deployed it, I build a Docker swarm. You build a bunch of boxes, and then you turn swarm on, and then it's actually probably the simplest Docker setup that you can do out there for multiple systems, and it handles everything internally. And it's really nice. The part that sort of annoyed me the most, and I haven't dug into it to see how the pricing works. If I'm creating a cluster of a bunch of specific EC2 types, my guess, and like I said, I haven't looked into the pricing. My guess is that you're paying for that cluster type. So if you build M4 larges or whatever, you pay for that many cents per minute.
That's the way I understand it too.
Yeah, which is my expectation for containers, was that I would pay for the CPU and the memory that specific container uses.
Yeah, that's what I was hoping for when I read about the Elastic Container Service. I was looking for a container service, not an EC2, basically an automated EC2 build of something I can run my own containers on.
Right.
Because if I'm going to do that, I'm just going to stand up Kubernetes or something.
Right. So I think it's good for
whatever your platform of choice is.
I think it's good for somebody who doesn't know or doesn't have the desire to run the container host operating system and just wants to deploy containers. They can go in and kind of do that.
It seems like there's plenty of other services that handle that, though. I mean, you can go run on OpenStack online, or not OpenStack, OpenShift online, and get that exactly.
Right. I'm not sure. I'm curious how, and I have to probably look into it. I'm curious how Google does this, because it seems like Google's setup is just like, you want to deploy containers? Fine, deploy them. We've handled all the Kubernetes for you, and we'll just make sure that your container never goes down. And you don't have to worry about it. You just pay for the container. And that's sort of what I wanted. With the way that AWS has it set up, you can absolutely go down with I mean, AWS has to have problems, but I mean, you can absolutely go down because you have to create your cluster in a specific availability zone, in a specific region, right? Like there's no easy way to make it really resilient, at least not yet. Now I have talked to some Amazon people. They're working on it. They've made a lot of, I mean, compared to where it was 6 months ago, they made a lot of changes.
Yeah.
And they're continuing to move forward with it because apparently they figured out that containers are a thing that people want.
It's weird.
So we'll see.
Cool. Well, I guess I'll keep an eye on it. In the meantime, Kubernetes themselves, the Kubernetes project did release a very thorough how-to on how to get Kubernetes up and running on EC2, which is probably where I'm going to go next and see if I can, putter around with that a bit. The idea is I simply want to be able to run some containers in too, just to, tinker around with and see if I can make it do, something neat or not.
Yeah, Kube ADM, Sysadmin, or whatever. You can stand up a Kubernetes cluster in a very short period of time. As a matter of fact, interestingly enough, you can, using Sysadmin, you can set up a Kubernetes. I guess it's not a cluster if you only use a single machine, but you can get Kubernetes up and running on a single machine to the point where it will actually, you can deploy containers on it. The trick is to remove the taint. And if you know about Kubernetes and how it's set up, that's not as dirty as it sounds. But it took me a while to dig in to figure out how to do that. And I actually got it running on a single server. So, but it's neat.
So it
Sysadmin kind of deploys them really quickly.
Looks like we scared away the viewers we had.
Oh.
Now we're down to 1 viewer.
5 viewers.
That might be you.
Maybe. It's possible.
All right. So, whatever.
We got six subscribers, though. So,
Yeah, that's cool. That's cool. Subscribers are fun. Right. So, I guess we've yammered on enough about Kubernetes and containers and EC2s and EC Elastic Container ECSs. Yeah. So moving on to our main topic for tonight, I want to chat a little bit about incident response, or I guess incident management is what you might call it. So the ITIL or ITSM definition of a incident is an unplanned interruption to an IT service or reduction in the quality of an IT service. Failure of a configuration item that has not yet affected service is also an incident. And to give some examples and yada, yada, yada. So basically, have you ever responded to an incident? I mean...
Yeah, it started with, oh shit, something's broke.
Yeah, whoa. So I've had a couple. I mean, as you know, we've started to adopt ITSM at the college as far back as when you were there.
Yep.
That was when things were sort of starting out, and the definition of an incident versus a routine request has been a little foggy. Like, I mean, there's some things that are certainly obvious. I need my email box quota increased. That's simple, right? That's routine. Nothing incident about that, except for maybe the end user might have got a couple of issues with their quota. But the service on the whole is perfectly fine.
Right.
But then there's foggy things like, user gets phished and their password gets compromised, right?
That's absolutely an incident.
Yeah, to me that's an incident, right?
Yes.
But there's some discussion that it's not necessarily an incident because it didn't degrade service.
Let's see. How can I comment without...
Careful.
Yeah, only because I'm trying to be nice on your podcast. I
am going to comment that this porter is awesome, and I'm so glad that I finished the other beer so I could get to this porter.
I think what you're suffering from is a group of probably managers who want to adopt the exact rigid standards as defined and not have any flexibility. And as a rule of thumb, there are no standards that cover every corner case.
Yeah, certainly.
ITSM may not consider that an incident because the service as a whole is not negatively affected.
Yeah. So,
however, if you look at it as a service for that specific user, it is absolutely affected, and it's even worse because it's not just affected. That's a security incident. They've lost control of that service.
Right. So, from an identity perspective, this may be an incident. Or maybe I should say from a mail perspective, it may be an incident. From an identity perspective, this may be a simple, we have a prescribed routine which we must go through when an account is compromised, right? So that sort of makes it a little more routine. But it's not quite a
a request for, service.
Yeah, I mean, based on the ITIL definition, it's not necessarily an incident, but
right.
Anybody who doesn't think that's an incident is crazy. I mean, that's clearly a security breach.
Right. So from a security perspective, it's an incident. Absolutely, it's an incident. Because, I mean, that's exactly what, someone's password has been compromised. That's an incident, right? But from an email or identity perspective, it may not be, simply because this is just like, oh, well, okay, lock the account, reset the password, yada, 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 do these things. And, it's just another day, right?
Right.
So that's not necessarily what I want to focus on. It was just sort of a, rabbit trail we've gone down.
Yeah, there's I mean, ITIL has a security management section, which may help out with this. And I'm not much of an ITIL person. We've stolen bits and pieces here that make sense. Like I said, trying to adopt something like this and think that it's going to cover every case, I think is crazy.
So I am curious, and I hope this doesn't get too far afield here, but someone that I met at Red Hat Summit 2 years ago, we had mentioned to him that we were starting to go down the ITSM path, or the ITIL path, whatever. And he mentioned the Phoenix project as a counter.
Yes.
Right. So I know you've read the Phoenix project, or at least you were reading it a couple of weeks ago. And knowing how you read, it's probably finished by now.
Yeah, I finished a long time ago.
So I'm curious on your thoughts on what the Phoenix project has to say about either this topic or maybe ITSM in general.
Not a whole lot, as it turns out. So it doesn't discount ITIL as you've been led to believe. So what it is that it
so
basically
I do want to clarify, I have not been led to believe that the Phoenix project flies in the face of everything that is ITIL. Okay. Simply that his response to us saying that was, oh, the Phoenix project, you should read this.
Yes.
Don't go that way. Look at this first.
Right. So basically, the way that they lay it out is that ITIL is wonderful and great and awesome and great for handling management of systems and doing all the ITIL things, but that you should marry that with basically with other processes as well. ITIL does not cover everything and cannot cover everything. You're not throwing ITIL out the window, right, but you're not living by it as gospel either. So you have to introduce flexibility into things. It's a great start. Most frameworks are. They're a wonderful start. But nobody runs.
That's weird.
I mean, nobody runs Drupal raw. You always have to customize it. Nobody runs. I don't know. Nobody builds a site with any of them, Cake PHP or Django or whatever. You're not running it raw. You have to build on it. So ITIL is a great start. Wonderful place to go to. There's a lot of information there. Especially with the college, which was a nice long argument when I was there. ITIL does not fully match with the way the college works. You have to kind of take what fits and use it and not use things that don't.
Well, that applies to just about anything.
Right. So, as far as a security incident goes and what you define an incident as, yeah, there's a specific definition inside of ITIL, but you may have to add or remove from that as needed to fit what you're doing. The security management piece of this doesn't seem to have anything. It's all about setting up policies and procedures and everything, but nothing about, oh crap, somebody broke security.
Yeah, well, ITIL is all about policy. It's very dry reading.
Yes.
I was chatting with a fellow also at the college, and he's like, "Oh yeah, I've been trying to get certified on ITIL." I'm like, "Wow, I'm sorry." When we first started down this path, I started reading looking through the framework to figure out what we were getting into, and it was just like I wanted to fall asleep the moment I started reading it.
Yeah, the problem with incident response, typically, when I hear incident response, I immediately go into security. Maybe that's just.
Yeah, well, I mean, a security incident is absolutely incident response, but it's also, I had a mail server down. I got to fix that. And how do you respond to that? How do you notify the public? How do you write up the incident afterward?
The key is that response to, oh crap, the mail server down is vastly different than the mail server has been compromised.
Yeah.
I mean, well, so significantly different. I mean, when the mail server's down, you're not taking snapshots for forensic, evidence later.
Right. So what that comes down to is
bring it back up.
What that comes down to is the mail server's down because of failed hardware. Just as an example, right? That's a systems outage. That's an incident that is caused directly by, it's categorized as a systems, so how do I want to describe this?
That's at least a 2 to 3 beer day.
Right. So with ITSM, you categorize all of your services, right? And they get defined, and there's service definitions and there's service teams and all this stuff, right? You remember this.
Yep.
So the mail team and the mail service is different from the general systems team and the systems service, right? A failed hard drive in your email server is a server or a systems problem.
Right.
It's not necessarily a mail problem, right? And obviously not a security incident, right? Whereas if there is a breach or if there is a compromise at a server level that caused a mail outage, yes, there's a mail outage. Yes, the mail service has an incident, but there's also a security incident that is classified under the security service, if you want to call it that.
Right.
Right. So something may be classified on one side as routine and an incident on the other. The same thing is causing both requests, if you know what I mean. This is why the whole thing sort of confuses me, because there's so many cases where I'm on all of the teams. Right? It's like I have to divide my brain and say, this side of my brain is mail and this side is system.
Well, so the ITIL uses the RACI model, the responsible, accountable, consulted, informed.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're on all of the teams, what is your level? What is your role and responsibility? I forget what they call that, but basically, what role are you taking in that team? Are you responsible for that thing?
And that's the pieces
for that thing?
Those are the pieces that haven't been defined yet, which is probably what's making it so confusing.
And they're not. The fun part is that they're not like you would say well, I'm absolutely responsible for mail. It turns out, no, you're not actually responsible for that service. The responsibility for that service is actually your manager. You're just accountable for when that thing goes down.
Right.
You're the one that has to work on it and fix it, etc.
Right.
And then, so take the SAN, I guess. You're accountable for it, and then if it goes down or something goes down, you have to consult a bunch of people and inform a bunch of other that whole RACI matrix thing gets a little complicated as well. But then what happens when the SAN goes down and the disk is for the mail server, and that causes the mail server to have everything compounds up.
There's an outage on the storage device on your SAN, and your entire VM cluster is down because of it, and now it affects every single service in the entire organization.
Right. And poor Nate is sitting in his office, staring at his screen. People are shouting at him from every corner, and he's just not responding because he has spin lock at this point. And he's trying to compile all of the different RACI matrices that he has to deal with to identify at what level he has to work on things. So all of his
what do
internal
I have to do
CPU,
for this one? What about that one?
All of his internal CPU is being taken up trying to figure out what exactly he's supposed to do at this point, because there's 20 different things going on and nobody's working on the problem. This is where prior to the ITIL thing becoming a reality, we had been talking about creating incident response teams.
Mm-hmm.
And this is where that I thought was a much better model, because you have a team of people from pretty much a representative from all the different areas. And given the area that the incident is in, the other team members act as support. So while you are fixing the mail server, you can be, you know as well as I do, like sitting and working on something, you can be audible about it and say, like, this is what's going on. Mm-hmm. Those other team members can be the ones that are handling, notifying people, recording things in the ticket, offering suggestions, managing, expectations for external parties, handling phones, etc.
And the way I understand it, that is sort of the way a service team is supposed to operate, whether it's an incident response team or not.
Right.
So, you've got a service team for, say, your mail service, and there's an outage, right? So, I don't know, define the person however you will, but the technical expert is the one that's going to be trying to solve the problem. And the other people on that team may be the ones handling all those other pieces you were talking about.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't think we got that far with the ITIL stuff. We were still arguing about, what were we arguing about? We were arguing, I think we were still arguing project management at that point.
Yeah. So the project management thing led into basic service management, which led into ITIL. So
right.
We've moved quite a bit past that.
We've sort of moved at that point, and at that point I was still banging my head against the desk trying to just get things done, damn it.
Yeah. So anyway, it's somewhere I want to go next.
It's useful to have a framework for this that you can follow. It's important to have a framework for this. It's important to have policies, procedures, etc. But don't delude yourself into thinking that you've got everything solved with one framework, or that it's going to cover everything. There's always a corner case. There's always something that's going to come up that's just not going to fit the model. And everybody's always learning. So
yeah, absolutely. So in an incident, I mean, you, like I said, you've been involved in a couple of incidents, right?
Are you trying to say that I cause incidents?
I'm not saying you caused them. I mean, guilty conscience?
No, not at all.
Not at all. I've never caused an incident. So have you ever been?
Themselves.
So have you ever been involved in an incident where, say you've got, I don't know, maybe a junior admin working with you, or maybe he's the guy responsible for trying to get things returned to service because he was the one on staff at the time, and he's just panicked beyond belief and running around like his head's on fire. You ever run into that?
Absolutely.
You ever have a boss that's maybe like that?
Those are worse.
I don't know. I can't remember if I shared this story or not on the podcast, but I'll try to be brief because I think I have. But the first role that I was in where I had any sort of control over systems, I was a joint network and systems admin, and there was a Dell Power Connect switch that I had to log into to make a change, right? And this was not anything that should have interrupted service, but there was a bug with this particular Power Connect switch where if you had copy and pasted the password into the password field when you logged into the thing, it's just, Telnet, or I think it was Telnet. If you pasted in the password and there was any characters in there that the thing didn't recognize, it would just, like, the switch would reload. I mean, it would, like, hang hard for a little while and then it would reload. And I didn't know this. Right? So I come into work one day and the senior admin had asked me to do this thing. I forget what it even was, but it was like, here's a spreadsheet with the passwords for all the switches in it. Just, use these passwords, get into the switch, do your thing, and you're done, right? So I go to do this and I paste in the password, not knowing that there's a problem, because he didn't tell me don't paste the password in. He just said, here's the password in the spreadsheet.
Yep.
Of course I'm going to copy and paste it, right? Because it's like characters of random gibberish. Copy paste, switch dies, and I have no idea why. Right? So it's me a couple of developers, a couple salespeople, and the owner that are in the building at the time. And all of a sudden, there's like 24 servers offline because, this is a small business. All of the ports are obviously full with mission critical servers.
And no redundancy.
And now they're all offline.
Yep. Good
So
job.
it's like he's panicked beyond belief because we've got customers offline, we've got internal servers offline, and he's just like, oh my God, what do we do? So I just calmly walk into the data center, notice that there's another switch below it that's completely unused. And I just start moving Ethernet cables from the down switch to the not down switch. And what do you know? Things come back. And he's just looking at me like, how did you do that? I'm like, well, I had a job to do. I couldn't just run around panicked and not get the job done, right? So anyway, that's one of the stories I like to share whenever I see somebody that's obviously not apt to deal with a panic situation. So I was just sort of curious if you had ever run into that situation as well.
That's in our official procedures. Step 1, run around room yelling
Panic.
fire with hands up in the air.
Ah!
Step 2, now that you're done with that, fix the problem. So yeah, I've had juniors and seniors on me during outages. Managers are always very difficult to deal with during outages because they're always on top of you. Like, is it fixed yet? Is it fixed yet? And it's always like, well, if it was fixed, would you be here?
Yeah, right.
It's not like I'm holding this information from you and not telling you on purpose just to keep you in suspense. Like, clearly, since I am staring directly at my screen, typing like mad, digging into what's going on, it's not fixed yet. I'm doing everything I can.
Right. So
juniors, sometimes you just have to yell at. Just tell them, you just have to yell. Calm down.
Calm down.
Enough.
Do it.
Like, the world
Keep
is
your
not
damn
ending.
head.
Like, this is now. I'm sure there are jobs where literally lives are at stake.
Yeah. So
I'm not with one of those.
In the story that but you're with someone that if you have a down system, people could be losing lots of money. Right?
Yep. Absolutely.
Yeah. And that's important.
Yeah.
I mean, it's important to your customers anyway.
Sure.
So in the story that I just shared, this was maybe 3 months into my employment at the little web host that I worked at, after I had left the ISP that you and I had both worked at. Right? So at the ISP, if we had a switch down, it was like entire regions of Pennsylvania were offline.
Yes.
Right? So to me, it was like,
Sometimes.
oh, there's 24 servers down. Big freaking deal. Right?
Yeah, I mean, you're right. So if something were to go down where I'm working now, people could potentially lose like millions of dollars per second. You're right.
Right.
But it does nobody any good to
I don't mean to ruin your sense of calm there.
No, there's no reason to panic. Like, okay, look, it's not my money, so kidding. But panicking isn't going to help. If I'm panicked,
no, panic solves nothing.
Or if somebody else is panicked, and like jumping all over me, like that's not going to help anything.
Yeah, that comes down to any situation where you need to think clearly, right? I mean, it's not admin related, but we were just having a conversation with a friend the other day, just about personality types. And we were talking about my wife and I actually, right? So we just used the example like kid falls down the stairs, right? I'm the guy who's trying to solve the problem. My wife is the person running around the house going, "Oh my God!"
Right. Yeah. Right. Meanwhile, you're picking up the kid like, "Are you okay?
You okay?" Yeah. Shake. Oh yeah, you're breathing. We're good.
I did this. I mean, we had a real, honest to God, life-threatening situation. So years and years and years ago, we were on our way to.
Oh right.
We were going to Christmas at my
I remember
father's
this story.
House. Yep. Driving down the road, and my newborn son decides in the back seat that he's going to have a seizure. I don't know why. I think he was bored and needed something to do.
That's what it was. Long car trip. I mean, gotta add some excitement.
So my stepson's in the back of the car with him, and kind of like, "Hey mom, he's doing weird stuff." So my wife turns around, looks at him, and goes into full blown panic. And I understand that. I get it.
Oh, absolutely. I can completely
even
understand
panicked,
that, especially when a human life is on the line,
right.
and especially when that human life is your kid.
Yep, even panicked. She's conscious enough to be able to do things. So she, we're driving. We're really nowhere near a hospital. So she, pulls him out of the seat, brings him into the front, checking on him, make sure he's okay. At one point, he stops breathing. Now, I'm driving. There's nothing I can do. I'm sort of pulling over, and I don't think that's going to help.
Yeah, pulling over is not going to help. That's going to slow things down.
I'm racing down the highway at this point at, I don't know, what's the statute of limitations on this? At very high speeds, clearly in excess of what you're allowed to do on the road.
I think you may
with
have
her, basically performing CPR next to me on he must have been, I'm trying to think, he must have been about 6 months old, maybe. Must have been 6 months old at that point. So she's doing CPR on him. Again, panicked to the hilt, but at least acting properly and trying to deal with him. And I'm on the phone with 911, coordinating a rendezvous with an ambulance on the road. I mean, because you just have to, you cannot panic. If I would have panicked, there's no telling. Like now, he regained breathing, and it wasn't a big deal. It was, and he's.
I don't know. It still sounds like a big deal to me.
It sounds horrible. So they're called febrile seizures. I don't know exactly why they occur. It's when your temperature rapidly increases, as a child, when your temperature rapidly increases, it can cause you to go into seizures. Provided that you don't have any more seizures after the age of, I think it's 6, then it's considered febrile seizures. It's only when you're a child and you're fine for the rest of your life. Like, I had febrile seizures when I was a kid. I've been good. I only twitch once in a while. So, my kids have been fine since.
Now you tell me this. After all those years commuting with you, now you tell me you had seizures as a kid. Great.
So my youngest, we honestly don't know if he would have had them or not, because at that point we're, trained medical professionals who understand that the moment there's a fever, knock that down as fast as humanly possible. So we got very good at identifying, and so he never actually had a problem. But it's terrifying. It is a terrifying, absolutely terrifying situation. But you have to keep your head, and that is always one of us had to keep our heads. Like, yeah, I mean, inside I'm like losing, like I'm flipping my shit, like I'm going crazy inside, but you have to stay calm.
Yep.
For multiple reasons. I mean, to be able to get through it, to perform the right, procedures, to do whatever it is you're trying to do, and that outward calm helps other people calm down too. So. I guess I'm fortunate that for whatever reason I'm able to do that. I mean, I've been panicked before, but like.
So it does make me curious. Throughout my life, so my father was an EMT when I was a kid. And he still is to this day. He's retired now. He's older, but whatever. He's still an EMT. He's still a firefighter. He's all these things. He's able to keep calm in emergency situations, and that was an example to me as a kid. But I was also a Boy Scout for several years. And as a Boy Scout, looks like you're out of beer, man.
Does this count as an emergency situation?
That is an emergency. Look, I'm almost out too. I should have brought 3 bottles up with me. Anyway, as a Boy Scout, I was trained in how to handle emergency situations, because there could be cases where you're out on a hike or, far away from civilization, and someone breaks their arm, or they fall off a cliff, or stop breathing or whatever, right? So long before I was ever a computer person or a sysadmin or a professional or even an adult, I had exposure to this sort of thing.
Right.
Now, I've never drug someone out of the Sierra Nevadas, after being mauled by a bear or anything. I've never actually responded to an emergency outside of civilization. But I've been trained, right? So I know how to deal with this stuff. I'm curious, have you ever been through anything like that before you ever had to deal with it from an IT perspective? And did that help you in, dealing with IT incidents or even that thing with your child?
I mean, I was a Boy Scout. I was in the military. I mean, I've done some emergency situation stuff. So yeah, I mean, I've had a little bit of training here and there. I mean, even growing up, my father was always, it was always like, you have to be calm in situations. Just seeing him act calm in different situations, it was, you know, it helped. I mean, I cut I cut the pad of my thumb off when I was a kid, and now looking back on it, he was not calm because, oh, you cut the pad of your thumb off, we have to take care of you. He was calm because he was about to pass out. But it helped calm me down.
Nice.
But you know, those sorts of situations were okay. Like, my mother was a nurse, or still is a nurse. So when it came to cuts, scrapes, you know, injuries of that sort, she didn't really freak out. It was other stuff that she would freak out over, you know, other emergency situations that she would just completely lose it. But as soon as it came to like a medical thing, she's like, this is what I do. I am a nurse. I can handle this.
Yeah.
I understand that your bone is sticking out sideways, but we'll just push it back in.
But I know how that works. I know how to fix this.
So yeah, I've had some calm people around me that kind of guide you through and kind of teach you that way. I try to make sure that I do that with my kids. You know, yesterday I changed yesterday. Today is Monday. Yes, yesterday. I changed the brakes for one of my wife's friend's daughters. And in doing that, we kind of had a talk about brakes and how they worked. And she was very concerned because the brakes that were on there were bad. And what do you do if you lose your brakes? And it was kind of like, well, you stay calm, and here's how you
panic,
can slow your
and you
car.
swerve off the side of the road, and you ruin your car.
Right. Yeah, you're driving automatic. Here's how you slow down in an automatic to the point where, okay, you can get off the side of the road, and you know what? If you hit a guardrail or something, you're not gonna kill yourself. You know, because clearly your brakes aren't working. And her immediate reaction was to panic. She's like, "Oh my God, what do you do?" Like, and I'm like, "Well, you know," I told her, like, "Well, one of the things that you could do is take it out of gear, put it in neutral."
Step
and
one.
She freaked. She's like, "Oh my God, what do you mean put it in neutral?" I'm like, "Don't let the engine push the tires anymore. It will slow down." It's really weird how that happens, but it will slow down.
Physics.
So
friction.
You know,
friction will slow you down. Unless you're cruising down a hill, right?
Right. Well, hills are different, you know. Then drop it down into one of the lower gears. I mean, you know this stuff, but
yeah.
It's trying to, like, I try to make sure that I impart that knowledge onto others, my kids, other people that I encounter, just because it's useful to not have everybody panicking over things. You know, recognize what you can control. Recognize what you cannot control. Panicking over something you cannot control is almost pointless.
I would venture to say it's completely pointless.
It's gonna happen. Well, yeah, I mean, it's gonna happen whether you want it to or not. You have no control over it. Sorry.
So I guess the bottom line is, if you're a new sysadmin, go get some emergency training, and it'll help you in your career.
Yeah. Well, go learn things like, go get your CPR training. Go get first aid training. Like,
yeah, I mean, absolutely. I've been through many of those things. CPR. I was CPR certified for many years. In fact, at that ISP that we were at, there were, I think it was an insurance thing where they had to have so many people on staff that were CPR and fire extinguisher certified. And I got certified in both of them just because it got me out of work for a day. And it was stuff
I did this.
I already kind of knew.
At the ISP we worked at, we had to do fire extinguisher.
Yeah, were you in the fire extinguisher class? I actually got to put out I actually got to put out a fire. It was fun.
So yeah, learning something like, I mean, it doesn't sound like it's related to IT at all, but learning
but it is.
something like that gives you some insight as to how you react in a situation like that. And another thing that's going to help you, especially with IT stuff, is knowing your job, learning as much as you can about what you're working on. So, you know, your mail server goes down. Well, know what to look for in a mail server. Understand how the mail server runs. You know, are the specific processes running on the server? Are the ports open? Look at the logs. Are you getting weird errors in the logs? Are you getting errors that people can't log in for some reason? Oh, it could be an identity problem. Maybe the mail server is perfectly fine, but it's talking to the LDAP server, and the LDAP server is broken. You know, like
yeah, right. So
you need to know intimately how your system works.
I think that the best way to describe this is situational awareness.
Yes.
It's something that's benefited me in many things, whether it's IT or not. Just be aware of your surroundings in an IT situation. Be aware of how things work and what the interdependencies are between one service and the other.
Yep.
I've been in lots of situations, specifically in IT, where it's like, oh my God, the mail server is not working. Why isn't it passing mail? Or, I mean, that's the thing we keep coming back to because it's probably the most common thread. If people don't have their email, they panic. But yeah, it's the number of times that I've solved an email situation specifically by simply calming down, stepping back, and either bouncing the problem off of somebody else or just clearing my head and thinking about what it is that's not working and then coming at it again with a fresh mindset. And then, oh wow, it was that simple. It's just this thing over here that somehow got misconfigured, or this change I made 4 days ago that's been slowly but surely building up until today, and now it's like come to a head and it's a problem, right?
And start at the simple things.
Yeah, absolutely.
Is the server turned on?
That's a pretty easy one to diagnose.
We do this. I mean, if you think about it, we do this in our heads. What you end up doing is building a binary tree of all the different bits and pieces, and you start somewhere in the middle. So you'll say, okay, apparently mail is not going through somehow. Can I ping the mail server? And from there, you can branch off. Yes, I can ping the mail server. Okay, you've already determined it's up. Networking is, at least the basic networking is working, all of those things. Oh, I can't ping it. Okay, now you can go down that tree of, okay, is the server on? Is networking working? Is the switch going? Like, are routes involved? Like, is it a networking problem? And you can go down that path.
Right. So networking is clear. Now it's an application level problem.
Right.
Right. Yeah.
Yep. But start with the simple things. I mean, one of the first things I do is, can I get to the server? If I can get to the server, a lot of the basics are out of the way. If I can't get to the server, then you start pulling back on the basics, networking and for all you network engineers, networking is not basic. I get it, but dealing with a server, it's either on the network or it's not.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. When it's at a service level, does the networking work? Yes.
Yes.
So as far as that's concerned, it is basic. It's like does the server have power?
Yep. Oh, it can get. I mean, it could still absolutely be a networking problem, but I mean, you get the gist. You figure out some quick ideas of some quick ways to get to a point where you can start digging into what the problem is.
Right.
One of the things that, and I struggle with this, one of the things that I miss often is looking at the basics. So you've gone down this path of like, and for good or for bad, I had a lot of problems with this when I was doing second and third level tech support. You get a report like, hey, this person can't connect to the internet. Okay, cool. It got passed to me by the first level tech support people. All right, cool. My assumption at that point, which unfortunately I had to stop using, was that the first level tech support guy had done things like, is the computer on? Is the modem plugged in? Is the Ethernet cable connected?
Yep.
And not every time, but a lot of times you'd end up with like, oh, okay, so the screen is black? Yeah. Did you try turning it on? Oh, wow, it works now. Oh, okay. And you spend a lot of time digging into things that don't matter. So don't forget about the basics. You don't have to catch them all, but try to hit at least a couple of, very simple. Can you ping it? Is the server up? that sort of thing, and then move on from there.
So what about after you've solved the problem?
Go have a beer.
Yeah, go have a beer. No, what about post issue documentation and whatnot?
Oh,
how do you feel about that?
You're talking about postmortems.
Yeah, incident reports and all the real fun stuff that everyone looks forward to after a long day of trying to solve problems.
I am a believer in issue tracking systems, ticket systems, whatever terminology you want to use.
Mm-hmm.
So I am the type of person who will take the time to open a ticket and record information about the incident in that ticket and put my conclusions in there and how I fixed it. And then it depends on what those conclusions are. If it was, oh no, the hard drive failed, well, there's not a whole lot you can do. Hard drives fail. You repair them, off you go. Best you can do there, I think, is if you don't have sufficient monitoring in place to identify like that the SAN told you that there was a bad drive, maybe you want to add that. It's worth looking at each incident and identifying if there's anything that you could put, anything reasonable that you can put into place that may help prevent a future incident. I think is probably the best way to term it.
So what about issues where the solution is sort of a meandering, path from the moment you found the incident to, the first thing you tried that didn't work, and the second thing you tried that didn't work, and the third thing you tried that didn't work, and then finally, the last thing you tried that finally did work. Do you still think that ticket history is the right way to document it, or do you think it makes more sense to distill that down into an actual problem summary and an incident report that gets logged somewhere? Like, do you feel like that whole path of troubleshooting is more valuable than just having the answer to what fixed it?
I find that the troubleshooting path is helpful, but I mean, if you're going to build a database of cause and effect, maybe that'll help. But keep in mind that the same symptoms can be caused by a lot of different things.
Yeah, but there are lots of cases where the same symptom is always the same solution.
Yes, absolutely.
I mean, just today, I had a problem where it was like this. I don't want to call it a convoluted system, but a system that has several moving parts, right? That's still in-house. There's this one thing that happens, I don't want to say frequently, but it's happened more than once, right? It happens a couple times a year, maybe. And it's always the same solution. And the first time I ran into it, there was this definite troubleshooting path of, is it this piece? Nope, that piece looks fine. Is it that piece? No, that piece looks fine too. Is it this other piece? No, that piece looks fine. And finally, you're at the very edge-most piece, and sure enough, there's your problem. Where if I knew that to begin with, I could have saved myself 30 minutes of troubleshooting.
Yep.
Right?
And that's experience. So
right. So obviously in my head now, when I see this problem, I know exactly where to look, and I go check two things because it's going to be one of those two things. Right. And those two things are directly related to each other. One is the source of an input, and the other is the thing that processes that input. Right. If this piece fails, then I have to fix this piece. If the input fails, then I have to figure out why it didn't end up in the input. Right. So, in a case like that, I think it makes perfect sense for, like, sure, if I'm the one that deals with it every single time,
then
yeah, I know it. It's in my head. It doesn't matter. Right. But if I'm on vacation, I don't want to have to receive a phone call that says, hey, that thing that breaks every 6 months is broken again. How do I fix it?
Right. Yeah, no, agreed. So having documentation there helps.
Yeah.
So yeah, like I said, building a cause and effect database. Yeah, incident. Well, they're only useful if you can search for them. So,
yeah,
but
and
I mean,
again,
if you
this
think about
comes
it,
down to what's an incident.
right?
Right.
So in this particular case, it's a single email address. It's not a full-on email address. It's like this forwarding address that has this automated system that makes it all work, right? And one little piece of that automated system didn't work right.
But if you have it in an issue tracking system of some sort, you can still search for it. And even that meandering path that you've had, I mean, when I have to come back to something that I haven't dealt with for a while, I'm going to look at the last couple entries in an issue. I'm not going to read through the entire history
right
immediately. I will
you
look at the
for those
last
few things
issue,
and say, "Oh,
last
it
couple
worked."
items, and say, yeah, exactly. How did I get here? Okay, looks like I did this, this, and this. Okay, that doesn't make sense to me. I'm going to read a bit further. Okay, all right, that whole path makes sense. Okay, that seems like the way that I need to move forward. So you can, well, RT was, I think, RT was what the college was using previously. But RT has this built in. So when you create a ticket and you go through and solve a problem, an incident, or whatever, you can, and I never dug into this deep enough to figure out how the whole thing worked, but you can mark that as a knowledge base entry. And then those knowledge base entries.
Building a document from the ticket?
Yes.
It's never really worked all that well.
Yeah, I never really paid much attention to it. I can search tickets just as quickly as I can go into a document repository.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
You can create a document off of it, put it into the knowledge base, and then it's a document that you can go to and say, hey, the mail server was not allowing people to authenticate. What could the problem be? And here's a couple errors. If you're seeing these errors, it's because the LDAP server is responding with all of the usernames in reverse order, like whatever. So I agree, it's helpful. Depends on how many people are working there, I guess, and
sure.
how deep you want to go. I like putting common things into a knowledge base like a wiki or whatever, and then letting the, like I said, if you're good at logging issues in a issue tracking system, and you can make sure that you tag them or keyword them or whatever system you're using for that with enough information to find them later, it should be fine. Quick tags like incident or outage or down or something are enough to identify problems. And then, mail server down, authentication. You find all the authentication tickets, and descriptive subjects, you can zip through those. I find that that's definitely enough. For really massively complex systems, creating decision trees and going through cause and effect and creating massive wiki entries may be worth it, especially if you're dealing with a lot of people that you work with. It's what, different teams work in different ways. So it's kind of what works for your team. Documentation is definitely important. You should be documenting things. But documentation can also be a major problem, because if you document every little nuance of everything, you're never going to find what you need.
Yeah, right. There's a certain level where it's over documented.
Right. I mean, you're quite familiar with wikis and how incredibly unuseful they can become very rapidly. So
always keep your documentation up to date and keep it well categorized. Otherwise, it is useless.
Yes, and if you're dealing with a wiki,
what you need when you need it.
Right. If you're dealing with a wiki, wikis are wonderful. They keep lots of history, which means when you delete something, it's not actually gone. So if you don't need that page anymore,
find it later.
if you don't need that page anymore, delete it. If you need to find it later, and you know that it was a historical item, you can search through history. But if it's not relevant, get rid of it. All right.
I think we beat the incident response horse. Incident response horse to death.
IRH. Yeah, okay.
That poor horse.
Yep.
Horses
beating the IR horse to death. So
reminds me of a Death Clock song. Thunder Horse.
Of course it does.
Listen, if you haven't listened to Death Clock, they are the most amusing metal band on the planet.
I've listened to them. I think they're wonderful.
So stereotypical, ridiculously funny metal on the planet.
We've been at this for a while. Why don't you take us out, Nate?
Yeah, so one thing I did want to mention that I didn't get into the announcements, there was one request for sort of a follow-up to episode 11, where we had John on and he talked about OpenStack and Triple O and setting up OpenStack. I have been in contact with John, and he says that he's really busy over the summer, but sometime, I think he said in August, we'll get him back on the show, and he'll talk about setting up OpenStack in a lab, which is specifically what we were asked about. So he may even go as far as to do a demo. So that may be like a video thing where we can, publish via YouTube and people can follow along that way. So look forward to that. I have to work out scheduling with him, and then I'll know which episode he'll be on and what date it'll be and all that. And we'll start announcing that once it gets a little closer. So something to look forward to.
Sounds like fun.
Yep. Should be fun. And we'll get more education on beer, and maybe he'll have that intro music we asked him for.
Sounds good.
I don't know. I kind of like our intro music. Now that I can play it inline, I want to like headbang during the intro, and it's probably not all that professional.
Wait, are we a professional podcast?
I don't think so.
Oh, okay. I thought we had to like have 100 episodes or something under our belt before we got a professional title.
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
We're never going to be a professional podcast. We're just going to be a couple of storied sysadmins talking about the old days. So soon the DevOps movement is going to consume us both, and I'm going to move on to like running an off-road park somewhere, and you're going to be, I don't know what you do that's not sysadmin.
I don't know either.
My God, do you have any hobbies that are not IT?
I don't think so. Is that bad?
I don't know. Do you feel burned out?
No.
Then it's not bad.
Okay.
All right. So all of you who joined us via the YouTube live stream, which at the moment appears to be none of you, but there were some of you. Thanks for watching. We didn't get a lot of chat in the chat room this time around, which was sort of disappointing, but hey, whatever. And the rest of you, thanks for listening to our audio-only podcast. So if you want to find us on Twitter, search for @IronSysAdmin, or you can find myself at Gangriff, or you can find Jason at...
I'm at Xenophage.
Xenophage, which is still difficult to spell.
It's got a G in it.
It's got a G in it. It's still one of our Patreon goals, or Patreon, not goals, rewards. I think it's like what, $20 a month, $10 a month. I forget now. I think it was $10 a month.
Maybe if I'm more interesting on Twitter, people will like pick up on that.
If you're more interesting on Twitter?
Yeah, I should be controversial or something.
No, you shouldn't. Twitter has enough controversy. We don't need more.
Oh, all right.
By the way, are you still using Mastodon?
I have an account.
Did you ever really start using Mastodon?
I think I posted a hello world or something.
Nice. I had an issue with my phone and had to reset it, and I didn't reset up Mastodon, and I don't miss it. It was just one more thing to check. And
I so want to like it, and I so want to use it, but I
completely agree. It's a great idea, and I really hope it takes off, but I really don't think it will. I said that last time around, and I've said that to a number of people who've asked about Mastodon. I really don't think it's going to pick up.
I use Twitter. I use Twitter because it's got all the people that I talk to. They're all there.
That's the key.
I mean, it's literally like the only social media account that I use on a regular basis.
Yep.
I have a LinkedIn because apparently you're supposed to have that. And everything else, I have some of the accounts because I looked at them at one point in time.
Yep.
But I don't use any of them. So, Twitter's my thing. I would love to move to Mastodon. I don't think I'd have a problem moving to Mastodon as long as I could still interact with the people that I have on Twitter.
The people you need aren't there. So speaking of social media, you can find us on Facebook,
Facebook.com. I think it's probably just /Iron Sysadmin. If not, just go search for us. Or you can find me on Mastodon at Gangriff at securitymastod.one, which is impossible to say.
Yeah, and I'm at Xenophage at the thing that he said.
Right. So yeah, thanks for listening and have a good night. I'm gonna click the red button now. Red button.